Well, this is live coverage from the LA fires. They are still burning. Here it is, 3, 4 weeks almost later, and these fires keep uh, flaring up, burning down more neighborhoods. This is just an insane amount of fire. That growing up down there, I never saw this type of destruction. Usually, it was there for a little while, and then it was over in a couple of weeks. And this is just insane. Okay, welcome to the Rude Bard podcast. We're doing a follow-up with our friends out there in LA who may have lost their homes or know people who have. And the destruction is unbelievable, you guys. I have never seen this in my entire life. I have grown up down there, lived through many a Santa Ana wind event with many of these fires starting. It is just insane the amount of destruction that I see going on there, and it's insane. We'll show a little bit again right here. And not only are these people having to deal with the fire, their homes maybe have been destroyed, partially destroyed. If they haven't been destroyed, trust me, there's smoke damage galore. So you're going to have to deal with a lot of that stuff. The Rude is off. He's got some business to attend to right now. But what we're going to do is we've got a friend of mine I'm going to bring on board. His name is Chandler Petty, and he is a real estate insurance guy. Why don't you tell him a little bit about what you do, and we're going to try to explain what's going to happen with these people who may or may not have coverage still, because either they were lucky enough and retained their coverage, or they were the unlucky ones that were in the areas where the insurance companies decided they needed to cut ties and not go out of business themselves and cut everybody's insurance. So go ahead, Chandler, tell us a little bit about you and what you're doing.
Well, thank you. I'm excited to be here. My name's Chandler Petty. I've been here I've been with insurance and selling insurance in California and Utah and the West Coast for the last 5 years. This is going on 6. And I have a lot of families that called me up immediately during these fires and just wanted to know what's the next step. Who do I talk to? What is the process? And I'm grateful that I get to share this knowledge with everybody else.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. I think I'm just going to show some footage here of some of the destruction, some of the time lapses of what kind of happened, just to recap as we talk about the uncomfortable stuff, which is the insurance, which we all just love to deal with whenever we get in an accident or some shit happens at the house, or you know what I mean. And a little background: I grew up down there in Southern California in Orange County. We've had these fires come through with the Santa Anas my whole life. It's like, like we said, it's like every year you can pretty much count on the Santa Anas coming in, and then some idiot starting the fire with a cigarette thrown out, or deliberately, or campfire, or homeless guys lighting fires trying to stay warm, and sparks go out and fires start. When my parents, excuse me, who almost lost their home out of 400 or plus homes, which was one of the largest fires back then, in Laguna, they were one of the lucky ones. Their house and 2 above and 2 below on the hill were saved, but every house above it and every house below it and other streets were completely destroyed around them. So they had some smoke damage, not a whole lot. I don't know how that worked out, but the winds were favored in their favor. And but the hillside behind totally burned down. So you had you had people who were dealing with vegetation completely burned off the hillside. And so then the rains came, because they inevitably do, and you'll never guess what happened. Oh no, you will. Mudslides. That's right. So they were sitting there with probably 3 to 4 feet of mud in their backyard that seeped into their house, and I mean, it was just insane. And with what they had to deal with the 400 plus homes around the area, when they had to deal with the insurance, what had happened is it took them probably, this was an insane amount of time. And we're going to get, and the reason I'm saying this is because when we start talking about what these folks in Palisades and the Eaton Fire in Pasadena and the Hearst Fire and the others are going to have to deal with because of the massive amount of damage and the number of homes that are completely leveled, the time frame is going to be insane. It took my parents about 5 years to get the insurance companies to get all that dealt with. I mean, it was just insanity. We were like, oh my God, 5 years, that's horrible. Well, as you start looking at this, and I'm just showing some bits of the destruction of California, so you kind of understand, the damage here. Now you and I talked about this the other night, and we were talking about what's it going to take? How long is it going to take for these people to deal with the insurance for the loss of their homes? You want to explain a little bit about that, time frames, what they're going to have to go through, and so on?
Yeah, absolutely. So anytime you're dealing with a large amount, right, of a huge fire along this lines, we're talking upwards of around $600 billion is estimated damage.
I had it like 250, and that was like 2 weeks ago. So that's jumped quite a bit.
So it's jumped dramatically. The other thing is all these homes and everybody is out of a place to live and sleep.
Right.
So then comes the other part of where are they going to spend the night? Is it going to be a hotel? Is it going to be a rental property? Is it going to be an Airbnb? Where can they stay away from their previous home? And right when fires happen and you lose your property, you don't know what was in the home, right? You're thinking,
so it's pretty much everything for most of these people. They just, what they're wearing is all they have left.
Correct.
Yeah.
And for the process, what I tell my families is, this is going to be a long list, but create a list of every single thing that you had. Hey, I had a couple pairs of shoes. I had probably 20 nice suits, right? I had this, I had that. I had all these other things in my house. So then when you're talking with the insurance company, eventually they will come to you and say, hey, we understand your house was part of this huge fire, and here's what you're entitled to. But they're only going to give you maybe a couple $1,000s, if that, for living expenses a month.
Well, which is a hell of a lot more than what the government was going to give them. I think what did Biden say? Oh, we're going to give you $770.
Yeah, exactly. $700, right?
Yeah.
But even then, with that $700, who can find a place to stay for a week with $750?
Yeah.
So not only is these insurances like State Farm pulling out of California, but they're doing it for a business because the state of California and the laws of California are not in their favor.
Right.
And insurance is just to make money.
Mm-hmm.
So when these natural disasters, correct, for-profit business. Yeah. So when these fires occur, that's when the insurance companies have to all come together, including the new one that after State Farm left, and say, hey, now we have to pay for all this damage, and it's still going on, so we have to wait, and we can't make any claims, we can't do any cleanup, we can't do anything.
Because they have to wait until the fires are completely out and everything before they even go in and start assessing.
Correct. So the assessing has to be done 30 days after the fire has been completely demolished, and it's not controlled, but gone. So there's no flame.
Out. Yeah. 100%
out. 100% out for
but
30
out.
days.
Yeah.
And so as we're looking right here, right, the Palisades fires has destroyed hundreds of thousands of homes.
17,000 acres burned. 1,000 plus structures. I would guess it's probably 3,000 to 5,000, to be honest with you.
Okay.
It looks a hell of a lot more than just 1,000 plus.
Yeah.
Look at that. That's absolute insanity, man. I have never seen that kind of destruction growing up down there with those fires myself. That's insane. So then if you've got somebody who's pretty much shirt on their back is pretty much all they have, maybe they're lucky to have their phone on them and they can maybe access their money from their bank account. But what if they somehow had to get out of the house real fast, didn't have their phone? I mean, it's going to be a nightmare trying to get access to any money they may have in their bank accounts to help with their living expenses, and then to go on with anything else to try to find a place to stay temporarily.
Correct. So right now, a major benefit is the American Red Cross in this region. They have shelters in place. There's a lot of people that are starting to live in those shelters for right now until they can find temporary housing. And that nothing's wrong with that.
Right.
For right now, if you can't get a phone or anything like that, American Red Cross and those shelters are the best places to find those resources and get that help. I know that last time I spoke with American Red Cross, that they had just over 5 or 6 stations or kind of hubs going on where they could have people stay and sleep and other things like that.
What kind of bed occupancy type of thing do they have? I mean, because you're talking like complete neighborhoods, complete cities. I mean, this is not just 100 homes or a couple hundred homes or something like that. I mean, we're talking like tens of thousands of people. Do they have enough shelter? I don't think they have enough shelters for all this. They've been housing the illegals too, by the way. I think we all remember that. Yay! Thank God we take care of them,
right?
Before we take care of our own. But I'm just a jerk for saying that. So,
no, absolutely not. You're bringing the truth out, right? Yeah. And awareness.
Yes.
And so when it comes to the shelters, there's absolutely not enough places. I know that the shelters for American Red Cross have been ongoing. Churches and communities down there in California have offered their buildings and other things along those lines. But there's also American Red Cross is actually helping with it comes to those essentials of food. So they have food that they are making meals to. So even if you can't sleep there, at least you're getting the necessities of food, clothing, toiletries, and other things like that. Other nonprofit organizations, the churches down there of every belief there's places that they're handing out food, clothing. You can actually go into their warehouses and go get your own clothes and backpack and what you need.
I would love if anybody happens to be watching this from down there who's living through this right now. And I did contact a couple friends of mine who were living in those areas, and thank goodness they were okay. They were able to get out, and then they came back and their house was okay. Waiting to hear back from another friend of mine I went to high school with who lives up in the area there somewhere, but I'm not sure if he's actually in these areas, but I haven't heard back from him. But I'd like to know, what kind of experiences you all have lived through firsthand dealing with everything that you mentioned there, Chandler. And to find out, is it been a tough, rough process, or has it been smoother than you thought, or whatever? It'd be good to know, because I can imagine, I mean, look at all these houses down, and every single person just in this neighborhood, not to mention all the other ones we've saw out there that are burned down, all vying for the same, same stuff, toiletries and necessities and food and everything else, that medicine. God, you can imagine your medicines, if you're on a bunch of different medications that you need, for diabetes or anything else, and that all burned up in the fire or whatever. I mean, I hope these people can get this stuff. So I hope there's enough resources. It seems to be, LA is not like a tiny town. I think it's second largest city in the country, something like that. Anyway,
yeah.
But it's huge. There should be resources for that. We hope there are. But as we go through this whole thing, I mean, it's an insanity seeing the amount of destruction, and having my parents go through this kind of firsthand was one thing, but they didn't lose a house. But good Lord. I mean, this is just, crazy what's going to happen. So now let's kind of move on a little bit more with what it's going to do in the future here. This video talks about the housing prices and how they're still expected to grow, if you can believe this, even after the fires. And this is a little bit of a report from the Daily Report and CBS News. And let's see what she's talking about. And we'll hear a little bit and then we'll respond to this.
The housing crisis has long been an issue in Los Angeles thanks to expensive rent and a limited supply of homes. In fact, the median monthly rental price in Los Angeles is just over $2,800, 41% higher than the national median, according to real estate marketplace site Zillow. These prices are now only expected to grow after the devastation caused by the wildfires. Thousands of homeowners and renters have lost their homes, reducing the number of available places to live. With fewer homes available and higher demand, longtime residents of Los Angeles may be priced out of the area. Cynthia Strathman joins us now from Los Angeles. She's the executive director of strategic actions for a just economy, an economic justice organization in Los Angeles that focuses on housing issues. Cynthia, thank you for being here. What was the housing crisis in LA before these fires, and how was it being addressed?
This is the point where she has her microphone on mute.
Hold on one second. I want to make sure that you're unmuted. I can't hear you.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
There we go. Yes, we can hear you. Thank you so much.
Okay. Hi. Yeah. So the housing crisis before the fires was already fairly dire, especially for folks at the lower end of the income level. That was basically an affordability crisis and was a big driver of the homelessness crisis in Los Angeles as well. What we're expecting with the fires is to see some of those tensions exacerbated as people at the higher end of the income spectrum who've been forced out of places like Pacific Palisades and are starting to look for homes in areas surrounding them.
So what needs to be done? We've already seen some landlords price gouging post fires. What needs to be done to ensure that people don't get priced out as these areas are rebuilt?
Well, I think we need to implement many of the same measures that we've been looking at before the fires even started, which are things like rent controls and, in the case of people who've been impacted by the fires, temporary pauses on rent increases. Altogether, we're also very...
And the same would maybe go for their mortgages. And we do have a video we're going to talk about that, where you are still liable for paying your mortgage, but there are programs where you can get a reprieve for a certain amount of time and things like that, but it's not forever. And it's probably not going to be nearly as long as you need to get rebuilt. So you are going to be paying for pretty much nothing and paying double rent, basically, somewhere else as you're waiting. Is that what you're hearing?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm seeing a lot of insurance companies and our reports that we're receiving as insurance agents that they are not going to pay off mortgages like a typical one fire. In this case, just like a natural disaster, they are treating it as, hey, you're responsible for your structure, but we are not going to let you go in and anything along those lines. You're not allowed in this area. You are literally just going to be paying, I believe it's 90 days is the last thing I heard. So they're going to give you 90 days of reprieve payment. Yeah.
What's the term they call it again?
I was trying to think of it. It's
yeah, I think it is in the video that's coming up. So if we can't think of it, it'll come up. But yeah, so guess what? You're still gonna have to pay, and you're gonna be paying double. And your heart breaks for these people because they're what they're going through is just craziness. Well, let's continue on with this and see what more she has to say on this.
Concerned about evictions because many tenants have been pushed out of their homes either legally or illegally in the past. And certainly when you have a situation like this, it incentivizes unscrupulous landlords to try to push residents out in favor of wealthier residents who might be able to pay more in rent.
And that's another thing that really pisses me off too, is that kind of shit that goes on. People are going to take advantage of people who are in a bad situation, and it always happens. There's nothing anybody can really do about it except to try not to get screwed yourself.
This is where the rich get richer, right?
Yeah.
Because they have the cash, they have the resources that
Mm-hmm.
some people might not have. They
Yep.
are offering people, hey, here's $80,000 cash. You sign over the deed. You don't worry about the insurance. I take care of everything, and
Yeah.
you just walk away.
Are you talking some of these fund manager companies like a
Yes.
BlackRock, a Vanguard, State Street, and so on?
I don't know who are there, right?
Possibly.
It could be possibly part of them. It could be
Yeah.
possibly like a third party that they sell them, right? They're subcontractors,
Right.
or they're just independent, right? And they say, hey, I'm going to go buy and offer. I got $16 million laying around. I'm going to buy as many homes as I can or property in these. And
Yeah.
I'm going to pay them out. And then I can worry about everything else once the fires are done.
Yeah, because what are you going to do? Your house is destroyed. You had your insurance from State Farm or whoever, and then they ended up dropping because, hey, they're not in the business to lose money. And with the premium caps that California put on, their road to hell is paved with good intentions. Their good intentions to help the customer turned out to really screw them over in the end, because if you're insuring somebody, you want to make sure that that you can cover it. I mean, you're not in the business to only get in $100 and you got to pay out thousands. And just as a small example, but
Yeah.
you get what I'm saying. And so if you're one of those people and you're desperate, you've lost everything, you have just a shirt on your back and all of that, and you have nothing left, you don't have time to wait. How long do you think, first of all, is it going to take? I mean, it took 5 years just for ours back in the 93 area. What, with the amount of damage and the amount of structures that are destroyed, you and I were talking about it. What are we saying here? How long is it going to, easily could take, 20 years you and I were talking about?
Yeah. I'm estimating personally, I think it's going to be about 25 years. But it really depends on how the local regional government in Palisades City, right? And the permits and other things like that. And the governor, how he allows or rejects, or in a sense, how he helps or not helps, right? Same with Trump, when they come in with funding and other things along those lines.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the permits to come and remove everything out of that property, they already told everybody, we're not going to give one permit until after 30 days of all the fires have been done. And then you have to have correct. And then you have to have your home assessed or your property lines assessed. And
that's going to take time because there's only so many assessors that work for each company or each city or whatever. Oh man, this is going to be a nightmare.
So I truly don't think the first building, kind of like Maui, with their fires and everything. I was just there, and one of the families just started building their home again. And what was that? 2 years ago? Yeah, year and a half, 2 years.
Yeah.
And they said they started it without permits. Just to get it going, so that they could sleep and be on an RV on their home.
Wow. Yeah, it's insanity. Let's listen to a little bit more of this, and we have a couple others where they talk about the California insurers. If you lost your home, what happens to your mortgage, and then just the bidding wars coming in on your house, and people are going to sit there and say, I'll take the 80 grand. I can at least put a down payment on something somewhere else. And so these people, companies, state, whoever it is coming in to offer this amount of money to somebody, a lot of these people probably are in no other position than to say, I'll take it, and I'll lose my $1 million home or whatever, 2 million, 5 million, 800,000, whatever it is, depending on where it is. And they're just walking away for, 10 cents on the dollar or something, or less than that even. So it's insane. Yeah.
Cynthia, is that an issue of needing to work with the state legislature to get some of this stuff passed?
Well, the state legislature is always a good idea, but I think we can also work with some of our local municipal officials. And I think that they're considering some of these really important mitigation efforts that can help prevent, as you said, longstanding residents from being forced out of the area by the fires. they can help consider some of these measures and put them into place right now.
We know home insurance has also been a serious issue for homeowners, particularly in the areas directly affected by the fires. How does that affect the ongoing housing crisis?
Well, we're going to be watching that really closely because it has had a big impact on the housing crisis. When home insurance costs go up, obviously the cost of living in a home goes up. Affordable housing owners and managers have seen a lot of problems trying to get insurance and trying to keep home insurance that's affordable. So that's going to be an issue moving forward. And I think a lot of people are really starting to question, is insurance the best way to manage some of our social risks that we incur? Insurance companies are for-profit companies. They're here to make money. And with some of the risk that we're seeing, it's not clear that they're going to really want to take that on. And how do we as a society manage those kinds of risks? We can't count on a private actor to really sustain our communities.
Cynthia, we have less than a minute left. What else is so important for people to know about this issue?
I mean, I think one of the things I'd really like to highlight is how important it is that we really spend the money we need to mitigate climate disasters at their root causes. We've known that Los Angeles is of high risk of fire for quite a while. I would like to not see us put a lot of money into public infrastructure that's just stopgap or mitigation. We need to think about the long term. Where are we building? How are we building? And who are we building for? And what kind of infrastructure do we need to really make sure that our communities are going to be safe over the long haul?
Cynthia Strathman, thank you.
Well, and I think with everything of that in mind, I think it all goes hand in hand. I think you have to do a little of this. You have to do a little forest mitigation. You have to make sure that the water is flowing like it should be from the north, like it was supposed to do. 10 years ago, they had that Prop 1 that was supposed to divert the water down through the aqueducts into the aquifers and then the underground reservoirs and the above ground reservoirs, not let 95% of this water just flow right into the ocean, which is a lot of what has happened. And it's been that way forever. Get a couple desalinization plants up and running. Although then you have an issue with that because they're doing that in Saudi Arabia and stuff. And then they have this big, huge salt mine mountain over here. And then, so what do you do with that? So that's not necessarily the answer either, but it all needs to work in conjunction with each other, not eliminate each other. And it's just like, oh my God, it just goes on and on. So what do you think about what she said there? Do you agree, disagree with what she was saying?
I love what she said at the end. I think that they need to stop and pause and think long term, because this younger generation is going to be the ones that really get to live there and make that impact. And the people that were there, let's be honest, they were probably making 100,000 or more.
Right.
The Palisades are not a low income area, right?
No,
all these homes are, like you mentioned, $1 million to, I think the highest one was roughly around 23 million. That was for sale, that got bought the day before the fires.
Yeah, and that was just in there. I mean, there's other areas where you have $50 million homes and so on and so on. But
So like you can imagine how much property and money is in these areas. Like, are they going to just say, hey, if you own the property, we're going to let you build, but now here's the new expectation, right? Are they going to do the fire codes? Are they going to allow, and I guarantee that insurance is not going to come in and say, hey, here's a $600 billion check. They're going to say, hey, everybody else around America now has to pay and help pay to cover some of these damages.
See, that's I was going to bring that up with you and find out, because this is something that I haven't really heard from anybody else, which is why I want to bring it up on our podcast. It is going to affect everyone. All of our insurance premiums are going up because of this stuff. And if things were done and the forest mitigation was done, where they took out the brush underneath and created the fire breaks and did all these things and made sure that they had everything in place, they could have saved, I'm not prevented at all. They could have just saved 10%, saved 20, 30% of the homes that were burned. Would have been a huge deal to save what was going on. But now we're all going to be paying for it all across the country. Anywhere else at State Farm and Farmers and you name it, all the other insurance companies out there, we're going to be paying higher premiums to cover this because they're not going to cover it and just say, oh, there you go, we'll pay for it because we're such great people. They're in the business to make money. Weird. Yeah.
It's like any natural disaster, right? Florida, when you have a hurricane, everybody's premium goes up.
Yep.
And now I was just writing a policy, or I just gave a quote for a new policy this afternoon. And one of the families from last month to this month, it has increased $365 exact.
Wow.
And that's just the insurance company saying, hey, we know we're going to have to pay it.
Right.
So in the next 5 months, insurances, and probably for the next year or two, every 6 months to a year, they're going to increase. It might be $25 to $50 per person per policy, but you're looking at a couple $1 billion increase every year, probably for the next 5 to 7 years, because they're still paying off Florida.
Right. And it's interesting because I did see a chart, and I don't have it up on here, but we did talk about that where California was actually paying about half of what the nation in general pays for similar coverages, and they're paying a quarter of what Florida pays for, because Florida hurricanes hit all the time. So they're paying a fourth of what Florida is and about half of what the average across the nation is. But across the nation, they don't have the perfect storm, if you will, of the Santa Ana winds coming, in where the high pressure, low pressure systems create that offshore, those hot offshore winds that create the conditions that for some idiot to throw their cigarette out or whatever it is that started it. So really, California should be paying at least twice of what they're paying, if not maybe 3 times, maybe not as much as Florida, but they should be paying a little bit more than what they're paying. And so that's the problem, like you're saying. They don't, insurance companies don't have the money to cover it if what they're bringing in is not going to come anywhere near a disaster like this. And that's what they have to assess during their premium, payments that they're looking to get from everybody.
Yeah. And that's why State Farm, I think it was about 8 months ago to a year, said, hey, we're done. No more policies. We are absolutely done. Does not matter. Here you go. We're canceled. Bye.
Yeah. I'm not going to continue just throwing money away.
Correct.
That's not why I'm in business. Yeah.
And when it comes to insurance now, a lot of people are like, well, Chandler, why should I even consider insurance moving forward? Right? And you are correct. If you're wealthy enough, you can build your own policy, and it's called an umbrella policy, that your home and all your other assets are protected no matter what.
Yeah.
So some of these people only had $200,000 on a home, and they're worth
3 times, 10 times as much, whatever.
10 times that.
Yeah.
And if they get in a car accident during this time, guess what? That's another ding, right? And so it's just ongoing building that they were underinsured and protected.
So you mentioned something a bit ago before we actually went on the air here is all right. So let's say you do have your insurance, okay, and it does cover all the catastrophic loss. Then what happens?
Great question. So once they actually allow assessors to come out, the first thing that the assessor is going to ask is, hey, what was in your property? What was on your home? And to be honest, a lot of people don't have a list or a file of what's in their home. They don't have an itemized item saying, hey, I had photos, I had my car, right? I had all these things, and this is roughly what I paid for.
Yeah.
And so that's where it's going to come down, is saying, okay, well, your home value to rebuild is going to be maybe $300,000 right now.
Right.
Well, realistically, it's going to cost more than $900,000 to $1 million just to rebuild, because of the demand of lumber and everything else that's going to increase because of this.
Yeah. Not to mention time frames, because you're not the only house that was destroyed. And so here's your house on fire, and so you have to figure, what's it going to take to do that, to rebuild that, like you're saying, how long is it going to take with everything else? But I think you bring up a good point. You need to show your insurance company, well, this is what I had. So, I was told years ago, take a picture of everything of value in your house, put it on a CD, put it on a thumb drive, put it in the cloud, wherever you have it, so you can present it. This is what I had. These are the TVs I had. This is the bed I had. This is the dresser and the furniture. This is that, and the other. And at least you can prove that you had that, so you can at least get paid. So, as is what happens a lot of times when we make a claim, what happens usually after that? If you make a big claim with insurance companies, what do they do after that? Most of the time,
they sit and they have to be evaluated, right? So that evaluation can take anywhere from 90 to 120 days minimum.
So you're more time.
So it's just more time. So all these insurance companies that are still there, right? Allstate, Nationwide, Progressive, all these other insurance companies, they've already met and said, hey, how are we going to come up with this money that, because State Farm's no longer a part of it.
Right.
Well, guess what? State Farm still has to participate in paying for part of it. Even though they are out of California, they have a responsibility as an insurance in the United States to help pay for those natural disasters.
Interesting. So they're stuck with that discount double check, no matter what. They're still going to have to. And then usually when you make a big claim, when you're with your policy, what happens to your premium? Doesn't it usually just gonna?
So it depends on why, right? But no matter what, anytime you even do a scratch on your car, the premium's going to increase about 10 to 15% on average.
Right.
When it comes to a natural disaster, that's when they won't typically allow you to do a policy under 500,000. They will actually require you to do an umbrella policy moving forward. And that's where it's like the highest coverage protection for you.
Right.
The other thing that you did mention, I just, by making these things moving forward, right? Mm-hmm. Go buy a safe.
Yeah.
The simple things, right? Fort Knox. I have some families that had Fort Knox safes. They survived, and they're the only structures that are in their home. Everything else is ash.
Wow, that's good to know, actually.
So Fort Knox is one of the best safes out there. I have several clients that lost their homes during this, and their safes survived, and everything was in their safes.
Even a house fire like the one on the screen right there. Huh?
Correct.
Wow.
So they have my understanding was their house was on fire for just over 125 minutes until it was completely burned.
Yeah.
But the fireproofing of the safe and everything and
protected everything inside.
Exactly.
Wow.
Nothing was destroyed inside, and it wasn't affected. And my understanding from my clients was that Fort Knox even reached out to them and said, hey, when you get a new place, we're going to come out and replace that safe, no cost to you.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, Fort Knox, you can certainly sponsor our show. We love you, man. Come on. So then the worst case scenario is your insurance company, good and bad. Good thing is they pay off your claim and everything in it. Worst case scenario, guess what? They drop you. And now you're left without any insurance, and to try to go to another insurance company, because let me guess, these guys talk to each other back and forth. Hey, Allstate, this is Progressive, Flow here.
Database.
Yeah, and so so you dropped them because they made a $1 million claim on their property and items inside, and we had to drop them. So you're going to be either paying majorly much more premiums with the next insurance company, or you may find it very difficult to get coverage at all, right?
Yeah. So if you are in that place where you have been dropped from an insurance company, be aware that you're going to have to pay a premium to be covered by a different one. There's a national database that every insurance company has to share with each other. And when we run your soft credit and we run your name and everything, that database shows up. So it tells us, hey, you've been dropped. You had an inquiry on this.
Yeah.
If you have an active case, no insurance company can actually cover you. We have to wait until that case or that claim has been resolved before we can write you a new policy.
Wow. Yeah, I feel bad. These people are going to be dealing with a lot of stuff, and it's going to be a nightmare. So on top of all of that, this just kind of talks about the bidding wars that are going to go on with your house now. So this is a couple minutes long. We may not do the whole thing, but we'll see here. But I mean, it just goes on. And this is why I wanted to put this video out, because it's more than about than just the fires. It's the aftermath of this whole thing. And it just looks bleak, but we do have a little bit of hope in one of the last little videos I'm going to play here in a second. So let's listen to this real quick, talking about bidding wars that these poor victims are going to have to deal with.
Breaking news, families out in Los Angeles area have another crisis on top of the fires, and that's where they're going to live. And LA already was battling a housing shortage before all this. Let's bring in Lauren Ravitz, who's a real estate broker in LA. Thank you, Lauren. I'll put up a headline here. This is New York Times. So it says LA evacuees scramble to find sleep in cars, shelters, and hotels, saying that the hunt for long-term housing already has sparked bidding wars in some neighborhoods on the edges of the fires. What are you seeing?
We're absolutely seeing that. We had a shortage of housing before Tuesday, and it obviously is continuing. Extreme demand, limited supply of all different figures of housing, from up to 120,000 a month.
It's crazy. So it's if you want to buy, there's not much supply, and then if you want to rent, I saw numbers. I mean, we have rents through the roof in some areas in a short period of time, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We had a limited inventory. A lot of homes on the market weren't really furnished, so landlords are scrambling to furnish them quickly. Families don't want to really move further south. They want to stay close to the community.
But they might be forced to, right? Are you seeing some of that already? People kind of moving away, or not yet?
Yes, they have to cast a wider net. They've got to go.
Right.
Yeah, somewhere else.
What's been the plan?
Yeah, and they talk about a little bit more about all of that. Where's everybody going to go? Well, they're going to go all over the country, whether it's farther away from there, up north in Santa Barbara, up to the San Francisco area, or even out of state, east, west, wherever. Yeah, so that's a brutal deal that you may have to completely move and uproot your life and go somewhere completely unfamiliar. Thank goodness a lot of jobs can be worked at remotely, or they have other offices in other states that you can work out of as well. That's if you're lucky and that happens. So, man, it just goes on and on. We're just delivering the good news today, aren't we? Good Lord, man.
Oh, jeez. Well said.
It just never ends. Let's see here. All right. So can California insurers cover LA fires? Let's check this real quick, and then we got one last one, and then we'll wrap this up. And appreciate you joining us today. And let's see what they have to talk about here. Oh, where's my sound? Hold on one second. All right, let's try. I mean, it's just insane. Look at that. Just craziness. Okay, they don't really talk about that there. This is the last one, and this is the one where they talk about how you still have to pay your mortgage, and I think we played that before, so you can look back in one of the other the 3 or 4 part series I did on the fires where we talk about paying your mortgage. So, but anyway, it sounds like between that other gal who was talking about the different. Oh, wait, one way out here. Sorry. Who was talking about how there's lots of different things that can help you, and you're talking about the American Red Cross and all these other services. In your opinion, do you agree with the statement they're making that are the insurance companies going to be able to pay out the claims for all of these tens of thousands of people who own these homes and other structures and get this taken care of, even if it takes 20 whatever years?
I truly don't think that they will ever get paid whole or made whole again. Yeah. I think that what's going to happen is there's going to be some type of settlement that says, hey, no matter what your house was in this section, you're going to get a flat rate of $80,000 or $200,000 or $300,000 check, and that's it. Yeah. And I truly think that's how it's going to be. Now, that doesn't mean the local state law, right? Governor Newsom, something like that.
Newsom, excuse me.
Yeah, sorry. I can never get his name right. I one of these days I will, but
he's a peach,
right? Yeah. Or President Trump, right? They might come in and say, "Hey, we're going to actually do something about this," but where's that money going to come from? FEMA, right? Like,
they couldn't even cover the hurricane damage in North Carolina, apparently.
So how are they going to cover all of this, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I did hear, not to interrupt you, but I did hear Trump was talking about that, but any of the money was going to have a stipulation, attached to it. You must mitigate the forest. You must get the water. You must fill up your reservoirs. You must build new reservoirs like you're supposed to do 10 years ago when Prop 1 passed. Have all these other aquifers and other underground and above ground reservoirs ready to handle the runoff, not let 95% of the water go into the ocean, not let the Resnicks, who own Palm Wonderful and Wonderful Pistachios and that whole wonderful brand, own 60% of the water in California. How can one company, one couple, control and manage? And I've heard things where they buy an acre foot of water for $30 and resell it to California for almost $200.
That's how they get rich.
How is that allowed to happen?
Because, right, the rich will get rich. When you have the opportunity, you have the property, right? You get the material rights for that property. If it goes right through that, you can control whatever you want on water rights.
Yeah. Well, especially if you specifically put it in your policy that you own the water rights. If you don't, sometimes you don't own the water rights. So you have to be very careful.
Very sure.
So, well, Chandler, I appreciate you coming on board with us today, or with me at least. We'll have you back on some more podcasts when the Rude's back and able to do it. We'll talk about some other stuff and kind of get some more, assessments from you and ideas and a little more background so people understand, a little bit more of what's really happening, and that it's not just the insurance companies being the evil groups, which we all have thought at one point or another. Let's just be real here.
Yeah.
But they are not in the business to go out of business or to lose money. And so it makes sense. And when California is only paying a half of what the country is and a quarter of what Florida is, something's not going to work out. And we're seeing it play out right now. And that's a shame. It's really a shame.
But I feel bad. The other last thing, right, is it's not just the state laws of California, but this is countrywide. The American dream of insurance and things, everybody is underinsured.
Yeah.
Even if you think you have, right, let's say you have $1 million of your home and 5 vehicles and RVs, right?
Right.
Okay. Is $1 million really going to replace that right now? If you lost everything today, what are you going to want?
Right. Right. And so, again, it's yet another industry that we hope can get streamlined in the proper way that will work out best for everyone, for the insurance companies themselves and the people they're insuring, and that we don't have to sit there and have to have attorneys to sue the insurance companies to pay us what's rightfully should be ours and covered, and then vice versa, protect them as well so that they aren't losing out either. I mean, there's ways that'll work out best for everyone. So we hope that we can figure this out, and we might see some good come out of this in that regard. We hope.
I think so. I think it's going to be another California strong, right? We have Las Vegas strong. We have Boston strong events that have happened in the past. I think California is going to have to come together. But if there is anybody that does want to participate or help please reach out to American Red Cross. I know they're looking for donations. I know they need help and volunteers. And that's
Always
one of the
been.
organizations, non-religious, right? They accept everybody. It doesn't matter at anything, beliefs, anything like that, non-denominational, whatever.
Yeah.
They are there to help everybody.
And if you don't donate to them, make sure whoever it is you're donating to with these fires is a legit company, that they're not some sort of scam company that's only going to send 10% off and they keep the other 90 or whatever.
Just like the benefit concert, right? They made, I think, they said around 800 million to $1 billion for these 2 concerts down in California, and now they're wondering, okay, how much are they really going to donate, right?
Yeah.
But look at these superstars that are like the NFL, right? The NFL, Taylor Swift, other huge celebrities have donated directly to American Red Cross instead, because they know that they're not going to get ripped off. That money's going to go to somebody that needs it. It's not, hey, right here, let me line your pocketbook and scam you to go to a concert.
Yeah, because you never know how many of those performers say that they're going to just donate their time and do it, and then to come back later and say, you know what, we deserve part of that or a percentage of the money brought in. I mean, you never know what these people will do. Hopefully they don't, but it's not unheard of. So.
Yeah, exactly. And yes, those benefit concerts can be helpful. I think it's bringing the community together, but also by having a huge organization that everybody's associated with, and there's not a scam, right? Because there's GoFundMe's and other things like that, but that's one specific. When we go to a donation like American Red Cross, we're dealing with a huge worldwide organization
that's been around for a while as well. Well established. Yeah.
1945, 46, right? And they work with FEMA and all the government agencies, insurances, and they help people.
Yeah, they're a great organization. So please look to donate to somebody like the American Red Cross and whatnot to help the fire victims. And don't let your money get just siphoned off to some other company you don't or group that you don't have no idea who they are. So it's the people who really need the money, who have lost everything, who really need that help, not the people who are putting the organization together to get the money, because they're just trying to make money usually. So, well, Chandler, I appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much for joining the Rude Barn podcast. And thank you for everyone for listening, and hopefully give you a little more insight to what's going on behind the scenes, a little bit with the insurance and what's going to happen. And, the trials and tribulations these poor folks are going to still have to go through. And it could be a couple decades, give or take. And that's going to be brutal. But we hope that they can figure this out and get some sort of support from various places, and it's legit, and he gets in there and we actually get stuff done. And I hope that Newsom doesn't rezone all the areas like we've heard of from single family to multifamily, or even worse, where it's multifamily, like large apartment complexes or high rises, because these are neighborhoods where the heartbeat of the quaintness of these beach communities and these hillside communities in Southern California, where I grew up. And it's like in Lahaina, we don't want them coming in with these big, huge resorts and taking away that most beautiful downtown area in Lahaina and the houses that have been there for 100 years and whatnot. And I hope they don't do the same thing here. Every time I hear him say LA 2.0, I cringe, and I worry that he doesn't really care. He's worried more about the Olympics, the World Cup, and other things coming to LA than he is the actual people. And he talks with the hands way too much, so he's a shyster at that point. So communities, all this shit, you've seen it, you know what I'm saying, right?
Yes.
Anyway, well, thanks guys for joining us. We appreciate it. Chandler, appreciate it, buddy. We'll have you on another time, and thanks for joining us, man. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Okay, see you later.
Yeah.